Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, respected chair and dear friends. I must confess at the outset that cardiology is a much easier branch of medicine than diabetology. Diabetes is becoming more and more complex. My talk is very simple. I am going to just talk to you about the current drug management of heart failure. If you really see, treating heart failure, actually it's an art. It's an art and science both. You have to really give time and look at the clinical hemodynamics of the patient when you start treating patients with heart failure. I'm just going to go through a few basic concepts. What is the concepts of heart failure, defining role of drugs, and the application of evidence-based medicine in the current drugs which we are using. If you see a basic concept, when we talk of congestive heart failure, remember, we are talking of congestive symptoms patients admit with left ventricular failure, pulmonary edema, while chronic heart failure is something to do with mortality benefit as well as congestive stage of the patient. So when you are treating patients in the ICU, when the patients are admitted with heart failure, it is basically a congestive phase. But when they go home, we are treating it long term as chronic heart failure, which is for survival benefit. When we talk of drug therapy, we want to optimize patients. What is optimization of drug therapy in heart failure? Number one, clinically the patient has to be good, which I'll tell you later. There should be no rhythm disturbances. The renal dysfunction should be at the minimum, and we should avoid acute decompensation of heart failure. So this is what we want to achieve in all our patients with heart failure, besides improving their longevity. So when we talk of drugs, drugs will be used for symptom relief. Drugs will be used for increasing survival, that is neurohormonal blockade, neurohormonal modulation like drugs like ARNI, and basically evidence-based or empirical drugs which we are using in our clinical practice. Starting with drugs, just the gist, digoxin, which we have been using for years together. What is the current role of digoxin? It decreases symptoms, decreases hospitalization, no mortality benefit. And that is why today, if you see the current guidelines, the digoxin is not mentioned in the treatment of heart failure. In fact, there's an editorial which says that Floxgov should be in the forest. There's no need to give digoxin to the patients. The last point is the myth of 5/7. Is it really necessary to decrease drugs for 2 days or omit drugs for 2 days? In fact, all the Western trials, there was no concept of 5/7. You must know it came in India or in Asia because in rheumatic heart disease patients with the body surface area was low, patients who were given 1 tablet per day went to dish toxicity. So the concept of 5/7 stays in India, especially in rheumatic heart disease patients. But in a patient with a normal weight, if you are giving digoxin, there is no need to give half tablet of digoxin and omit 5/7. Diuretics, just 2 things I'm going to tell you, clinical points on diuretics. The second point, diuretic need does not correlate with the ejection fraction. That's important. Somebody will say, my ejection fraction of my patient is 25%, he requires only 20 milligrams of Lasix or furosemide. Remember this, the whole therapy, the whole dose of diuretics depends upon right ventricle. If your right ventricle fails, you have pulmonary hypertension, your diuretic dose will be very high, disproportionately high to your ejection fraction. And that is number 1, important. And number 2, chronic diuretic therapy causes thiamine deficiency. This is very good paper which says if you don't treat thiamine in a chronically diuresed patient, in fact, that will decrease the ejection fraction further. So these are 2 important practical points in diuretic usage in patients with heart failure. Neurohormonal blockade for survival, beta blockers, ACE, ARBs, spironolactone, and ARNI. Now, I'm just going to give you a gist. Beta blockers, mandatory for survival benefit, no question. All patients of heart failure to be on beta blockers. Number 2, avoid in NYHA class 4. Patients admitted with heart failure with Lasix drip or torsemide drip and noradrenaline drips, beta blockers should be omitted. Many times what happens is, in the decompensated heart failure, their sinus rates are very high. Patients have sinus tachycardia. We get calls, how to reduce the heart rate. It cannot get reduced. You have to improve the hemodynamics to reduce the sinus rate. Beta blockers should be withdrawn, number 1. And number 2, comparison. Carvedilol, metoprolol, bisoprolol, doesn't really matter. Give a good dose, 2 things. Give a good dose of beta blockers. What's a good dose? The sinus heart rate should be up to 70, but at least less than 85 at rest. And number 2, the dose should be such that the effort tolerance of the patient should be checked on beta blockers. What is that? When we walk or when the patient stresses out, the sinus rate increases to keep the effort tolerance at a good rate. If you over beta blockade, patients will complain of fatigue while doing exercise. So if a patient of heart failure complains of fatigue while say 10 minutes walk or 6-minute walk, that means your beta blockade is high. So these are the two things you must know regarding the doses of beta blockers. ACE-ARBs, now with the advent of ARNI, really this question doesn't come. We have to discuss this again and again, but just the gist, one slide. ACE better than ARB. ARB should be used when intolerant or inadequate response to ACE. ACE and ARB is equal in post-infarct LV dysfunction, no question, but ACE and ARBs are contraindicated. But with the advent of ARNI, in fact, the whole thing has changed now. And that will come, I'll show you the last guideline of the ACC, which shows that in heart failure now, we are not using these drugs, we are going straight to ARNI. Drugs, empirical drugs, L-carnitine, coenzyme Q, and vitamins. Now, if you see prescriptions of, say, 100 cardiologists or 100 physicians, still L-carnitine, that's a huge tablet. 2 tablets thrice a day, coenzyme Q, so many drugs are prescribed. Is there an indication to use it? I'll just tell you the indications. L-carnitine, indications. Long-standing ischemic cardiomyopathy not responding to routine drugs. The routine drugs, I'm going to show you the list. Adriamycin-induced cardiotoxicity. That means patients who are on chemotherapy, you can use carnitine. CHF on hemodialysis. So many hemodialysis patients have severe LV systolic dysfunction, you may use this drug. CHF with peripheral vascular disease and large anterior AMI with CHF large, EF 20%, empirical IV 5 grams per day for 3 days. Very empirical, no survival benefit. Routine use of L-carnitine is not advocated in chronic heart failure. Coenzyme Q, if you see in the West, coenzyme Q is a drug which you get across the counter, anywhere. It's a fad to use coenzyme Q. What is the data for heart failure? There are some papers which showed mortality benefit, but the QSYMBIO trial clearly showed that not routinely recommended in heart failure. But, however, if you have a patient who has statin intolerance, you may give coenzyme Q in patients with heart failure. And the second is, in India, people insist that we want some vitamins. If at all you want to give vitamins, give coenzyme Q and vitamin B1, thiamine. That's the best. Otherwise, all other vitamins, empirical, Bicosol, instead of giving a Bicosol, at least give coenzyme Q. That's the only role. Otherwise, routine use of coenzyme Q in heart failure is not recommended. Newer drugs, ivabradine, we all know the SHIFT trial. Against placebo, it clearly showed mortality benefit in the SHIFT trial. What are the current indications? Patients should be in sinus rhythm. Patients with atrial fibrillation to control ventricular rate, there is no concept of ivabradine. Do not give ivabradine, number 1. Number 2, beta blockers, after maximum tolerated dose of beta blockers, if your sinus rate is more than 70, some papers say sinus rate at rest more than 85, you should add ivabradine. Or patients who are intolerant to beta blockers, COPD patients, you must give ivabradine, but the ivabradine dose should be high, 5 or 7.5 milligram twice a day. Now, the problem with ivabradine is that after the advent of ivabradine is a very simple drug, safe drug, nothing happens with that. You give, nothing will happen to the patient also, I don't know what happens to the heart. But because of this, there's a tendency to avoid beta blockers and give ivabradine. That's not done. In chronic heart failure, the first drug is beta blocker for survival. Only if these indications do not fit, if the patient fits into these indications, then only add ivabradine. Do not replace ivabradine for beta blockers. That's extremely important. This is what is happening because of the hardly any minimal side effects of this drug. The mortality benefits of both are not comparable. There's no head-to-head comparison, and there will be no trial further for this. ARNI, a few things, because this is perhaps the most important drug which has changed the whole scenario of heart failure clinically. And we have seen, after practicing for 30 years, the only drug which really made the difference in clinical practice was ARNI. And there's no question. And people who are using it will clearly vouch for it, that it has really made a difference. A few things, I'll not go into details, but natriuretic peptides are beneficial in heart failure. Neprilysin degrades peptides. So when you inhibit that, your NP increases. At the same time, it decreases angiotensin 2, and that is why I require ACE or ARBs. Now, why valsartan? They tried ACE inhibitors, but the combination of ACE and neprilysin inhibitors caused angioedema, and that's why they thought of ARBs. And out of the valsartan at that time was the maximally used drug, and that is why valsartan came into the picture. The Paradigm HF trial clearly showed benefits. I'll not go into details. Cardiac mortality, hospitalization, overall mortality decreased. What about BP and ARNI? This is important. At what level of systolic blood pressure will you start ARNI? Now, A very, very clear indication has been given now that the lower limit initially was 100 plus. Now between 90 and 95, you can start ARNI, number one. The response of blood pressure to ARNI is interesting. You will find that if patients who are hypotensive, over a period of time, if they don't deteriorate and if we improve their hemodynamics, their systolic blood pressure increases after ARNI. While those who are on the higher side of blood pressure, who are 150, 150, 90, hypertensive patients, after a good dose of ARNI, the BP will decrease, but the minimum dose to decrease that blood pressure is 100 twice a day, minimum. With 50, half BD, again, I always say this, in India we always tend to have homeopathic doses, ARNI, half, 1/4 BD, it has no meaning. There's no meaning in medicine to give some homeopathic doses, otherwise it will not work. Either you give a good drug in a good dose or you don't give the drug. That's okay. Sometimes you have to reduce the dose, but not homeopathic doses. 1/4 ARNI has no meaning. Then don't give it. Hypotension compared enalapril in paradigm shift, it clearly showed that enalapril had lesser hypotensive episodes, but the tune to which ARNI reduced blood pressure did not require hospitalization. So hospitalization, in fact, was more seen in enalapril-induced hypotension than ARNI-induced hypotension. This was important. So this only tells you that, okay, don't worry. It will not suddenly drop to 60 and 70, the systolic pressure, that the patient will have syncopal attacks. That's important. If you have hypotension, what to do? Reduce diuretics. The commonest thing is diuretic-induced hypovolemia or nitrate-induced hypotension. So in treatment of chronic heart failure, remember, most important is survival benefit. So here you can decrease the doses of nitrates or give the lowest dose of nitrates, treat hypovolemia, if not reduce ARNI dose, and sometimes it does happen that 1 to 5% of patients you have to stop ARNI, you stop ARNI. It's not that the drug is such that it will work in all 100% of patients. So if it is required, you stop ARNI. But usually it is not required if you work on the other parameters. Renal dysfunction. In general, all the trials have shown that if the eGFR is less than 30, then you have to give 50 milligram OD. Okay, otherwise you can build up to 200 milligram twice a day. In general, I'm telling you, in Indian patients, 200 milligram twice a day is given in 5% of patients. Number one, of the expense, and number two, in general, they do not tolerate 200 twice a day. It is not they don't tolerate, but 200 twice a day is difficult. Majority of our patients are 100 twice a day, but in general, try to build up the dose at least 100 twice a day, at least 100 twice a day. You can start slowly, especially in hypotensive patients, but at least try to achieve 100 twice a day. In general, there is no significant deterioration of renal function, but we do see increase in serum creatinine initially. If the hemodynamics improve, the serum creatinine will come down. So remember this, don't have a knee-jerk reaction that, okay, if the creatinine rises, we have to stop this drug. Be careful, but watch the patient. You can repeat his eGFRs and see what happens. In general, the nephrology criteria is if there's a jump of 25% more of serum creatinine, simple, not eGFR, you stop the drug. That is their criteria. But we look at the eGFR less than 30, then only 50. Otherwise, but still be careful. But in general, as hemodynamics improve, creat level comes down. It takes time. It takes weeks to months. So you have to monitor eGFR continuously. A lot of trials, Paragon, as Dr. Shailaja Kale showed, that preserved EF, unfortunately, I'll just take questions on it later on, has not shown mortality benefit with ARNI. So that's number one, except a small subset in women. Post-AMI, still the verdict is not out. That means, do all patients with MI, thrombolized or plastid with LV dysfunction require ARNI on day one? The trial will come out. Transition and Pioneer clearly show that acute decompensated heart failure, can we give ARNI? And now the answer is yes, but how to give it? When the patients are admitted to the ICU with furosemide or Diator drip or noradrenaline or dopamine, this is not the time to start ARNI. The criteria is minimum 48 hours after inotropes are stopped. Depending upon the hemodynamics of the patient and eGFR, you can introduce a small dose of ARNI. This is the only subset where you have to start slow and go slow. But they clearly showed that earlier you start ARNI after acute decompensated heart failure, your rehospitalization decreases. So transition trial, clearly both the trials which clearly showed that it does make a difference. Okay. So the guideline clearly says now, patients with chronic heart failure, if the patients are on ACE and ARB, now you can replace these drugs with ARNI to reduce mortality. That's important. Finally, a few slides. See the medicines which I used to use a few years before Arni. Lenoxin, digoxin, beta blockers, ACRB, carnitine, UB, hydrolysine, nitrates, and vitamins, and all others. Now, mandatory drugs, beta blockers, Arni, eplerenone, and SG2L2 emitters in diabetics, which I am not going to talk on. These are mandatory drugs. The rest, depending upon the subset. Finally, just 3 slides which are important in clinical management of heart failure patients. Number 1, echo in heart failure. What are you going to look at? Just don't look at the EF. Send you a cardiologist, look at EF. Please look at the following things. EF less than 20, bad prognosis. LV dyssynchrony, the base is moving, the whole apex is dyskinetic. They will do badly despite a reasonable ejection fraction. EF 35 to 40, all LVs dyskinetic apically, they will do badly. RV dysfunction, they will do badly despite EF. Patients with RV dysfunction, they are too late for even heart transplant. So RV dysfunction is important. LV diastolic dysfunction, LV thrombus. These are the important parameters you must see besides EF. People look at the EF and start drugs. No. Whenever you find clinical echo disparity, think of these lines. Then you can tell the patients that despite whatever you do, you may not do badly. Finally, last 2 slides. Clinical echo disparity. When you find that the echo is good or bad and clinically they are not doing well, anemia, salt intake, diuretic-induced thiamine deficiency, and ongoing ischemia. Finally, what is an optimized patient in drug management of heart failure? My patient should be warm, dry, Stevenson's classification, the fourth part. Sinus rate should be less than 80. Holter, no rhythm disturbances, no NSVT, and the ectopy load should be less than 15% of the total beats. NYHA class 2, preferably. Effort tolerance 6-minute 8 walk, reasonably okay. GFR between 40 and 50 is acceptable, and no hospitalization. This is what I want to achieve in a treatment of heart failure. And this is, I want to optimize my medicines to whatever, depending upon the clinical subset. But this is what I want as an optimized patient in heart failure. So, in conclusion, we must know the concept of heart failure, that when we are talking of chronic heart failure, we're looking at mortality. In congestive, we are looking at acute episodes, acute decompensated. Optimization of goal is important. I must know what I want. The last slide. This is what I want in a treatment of heart patient. When I see my patient in my clinic, my protocol should be ready. What I want in a clinically in a patient. Categorize subsets depending upon the heart failure subset. Identify pressing factors and judicious use of drugs. Blanket therapy is not warranted now. We must treat by drugs as far as by evidence-based medicine. Thank you very much.